Hi everyone, so glad you're here. Today's video is going to start a little mini series. We're going to talk about Venezuela as a case study for everything that this channel is about. We're about seeing through the noise to understand the signal. We're about trying to understand what is really going on and what we could do about it differently. This video, as the anchor for the mini series, is going to talk about something that seems hard to understand. What about the United States military actions in Venezuela means for the average everyday American. You see, the current news headlines is all about international law, domestic law, congressional oversight, things that feel distant and far away. And sometimes those things are incredibly important. In fact, one of the videos that we'll do in this mini-series is dissecting the international and domestic law part of this. But really where I want to anchor this, and if you stay to the end of this video, what you'll get out of it is at least three things that you can expect about the actions of Venezuela hitting the average everyday American, you and me. So first, let's cover just briefly, in case you aren't caught up on the news, what we know as of today when I'm recording this, which is the first part of January. Right around New Year's, right around the beginning of 2026, the United States military launched a mission along with law enforcement, American law enforcement. And we went into Venezuela and captured or kidnapped the president of Venezuela. And we brought him back to the state of New York to await federal court. In the bigger context, there are international American sanctions against Venezuela. The president of Venezuela, Maduro, is not a good guy by any stretch of the imagination. We'll cover that in a little more in another video. But this is a part of the world that I know pretty well from my time in the State Department when I managed all the science and technology relationships with all the countries in North South America. And so what we often forget, though, when we're talking about policy, we're talking about international law, we're talking about military actions, we forget that it all feels really far away for average everyday Americans who are struggling to make ends meet here at home. So let's go there. Right to it. The first cause and effect that I want you to understand is the economic ripple effect. You see, Venezuela has the largest reserves of oil in the world, and certainly in our hemisphere. It is a country who, if they can produce more oil, you would see gas, heating oil, all the derivatives of oil prices decrease for all of us here in the United States. It is also a country racked with instability. There has been conflict for many years, and that will impact the amount of oil that it will produce. Going in to capture a president without any warning whatsoever and not having a clear game plan for what happens next. And if you watch any of the news, it is very much a developing situation. You are likely to start to see higher premiums for oil. You're likely to see companies unwilling to invest. We don't really know what's going to happen, but the thing that businesses, especially businesses around oil, is predictability. And we just made the entire country a whole lot less predictable. Therefore, you can expect higher prices because of this. The second point I want you to understand is this administration wants you to believe that U.S. companies are really eager to go invest in Venezuela. Well, the United States government has done research into this over the last couple of years, and there's actually a report, and I'll put the report up here on the screen. I won't read through it. I'll put the link to the report down in the description for this video. But what the report says is that U.S. firms, particularly Chevron, has been trying to invest in Venezuela. Here's my editorial of that. They're having a really difficult time. It's unpredictable. It's an unstable country. And what our military actions most likely just do? Make it less stable. So while I can't predict that U.S. companies are going to dramatically change their investment footprint in Venezuela, I can tell you that the thing that makes them really hesitant to invest is the instability. And by plucking the leader out single-handedly in a way that has just been unprecedented, that is making it less stable, making it less likely that companies are going to be really eager to go invest, making the long-term economic benefit to the American people unlikely. 3, sanctions, tariffs, and the knock-on effects from a policy perspective. See, our country is increasingly using these economic tools to try to get what they want out of other countries. And that has been arguably successful or not, depending on what your view is. But here is what the actions of Venezuela shows the rest of the world. That if you give in to those demands that are being extorted using tariffs, which are, by the way, making all of our prices go up, you're not likely to be left alone. Venezuela was trying to comply with our economic policies. We can talk about the drugs in another video. We will talk about the drugs in another video. But at the end of the day, the United States is going to have to use these policies more and ratchet them up, which means more import prices, which means reshaping supply chains, which means disruptions in how we get our goods, which means making everything more expensive. And then we just went through three. We went through the economic ripple effects very directly. We went through US companies in Venezuela. We went through the sanctions and tariffs and how those are likely to become more prevalent, and how all three of those things are likely to make everything more expensive for the average everyday American, which is definitely not the narrative you're hearing from anyone in DC right now, which is part of the problem. The last thing I want to say, we just made the entire security situation in Venezuela far more complicated. If this administration would have had a neat and clean plan that maybe they would have had if they would have had to go to Congress and get approval and been asked the questions, what happens next? That's always the question with military operations. What happens next? And there isn't an answer for that. And you do have a lot of armed cartels. You do have a lot of other actors in the region who are going to be eager to move in their direction. You have countries like Russia and Iran and other actors that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. That was at the inauguration of the interim president, who was Maduro's vice president. I suspect that you're going to see the entire region of South and Central America start to look away from the US for security cooperation. What does that mean? It means actually fighting cartels. It means anything that is genuinely providing American security is all about to get a whole lot harder in the long term for some short-term headlines. So what's the major takeaway here? What I want everyone to think about is when you hear about all these headlines in Venezuela and international law, domestic law, again, we'll break that down in another video coming up here shortly. I want you to think about, is this going to make my life better or worse? It's going to make things more expensive, not less. It's going to make things less secure, not more secure. It's going to make things less predictable, not more predictable, which is bad for all of us. And that's how you start to separate the signal from the noise. You really look for the evidence, you look for the context, and you look for past precedent. I skimmed over that in this video to do a high-level overview, but we're going to dive deep into the videos upcoming. And if there's anything in particular you want me to dive deep on, whether it's Venezuela related or not, throw a comment below. Thank you. If you haven't yet, please click like on this video, drop a comment below, and click that subscribe button. It'll help the YouTube algorithm make sure that these videos are getting into your feed. Thank you.